that you have a teacher that you remember. In the fall, we were in the backyard at Lisa's house. It was amazing. And all the kids and dogs were there. And so every time we had a little gathering like this, had to include the kids, one of the questions that we asked was, can you remember the worst teacher that you ever had? Every hand went in the air. Every kid knew exactly who it was. Can you remember the best teacher that you ever had? Every hand went in the air. Somehow the extremes of our lives, in the educational circumstances in a classroom, they imprint something deeply upon us. We all know exactly who our worst teacher was and why we hate them so much. We all know exactly who our best teacher was, why they were so impressionable for us. And that's what we're going to talk about. We've been in this series asking, what does it feel like to follow Jesus? It's somehow even better than we imagine. And I'll do a little recap in a moment, but sometimes it's helpful as a leadership team. We've been asking, where are we as a church? We're in the duct tape, forget to press record, fix things with a hanger phase of this thing. It's really fun. There's all kinds of stuff going on. To get through this phase, we're asking everybody who thinks of Dwell Church as like, this might be my spiritual home. We're asking y'all to do 3 things. I got a clicker here. Let's see if it works. You got to turn it on. Wait for it. Okay. It's not working. Is it plugged in back there? Oh, yeah. I swear, we tested it. All right, Lincoln, you ready? We're going to go on the fly, buddy. Okay. All right, if Dwell Church is your home, we're asking you to do 3 things. Attend. You guys are doing great. You're here. Amazing. We're asking you to give in some way. I'll talk more about that in a second. We're asking you to build. Build is kind of our word for volunteer. We're retiring the word volunteer. Because if you're giving some time here, you're not volunteering that time, you're using it to build something, an environment, a program, or even maybe a person. You're building in to someone else. Everybody hanging out with all of our amazing kids are building into those kids. And what are we building? We're building a place where God can dwell. That is the strange promise that Jesus gives to us, that he will dwell within us and with us. So we're building places where Jesus said he would show up and we could count on him being there. So people are given time. It's amazing. I want to talk a little bit about giving. Something that I say sometimes is we're doing this the hardest way possible. And our leadership team said, please say more. What did you mean by that? So here's what I mean when I say we're doing this the hardest way possible. Sometimes when somebody plants a church, they'll get 3 years of salary fundraised in advance through an organization or partnerships, and then they'll do 3 years before their launch day of planning, strategizing, building, practicing, working alongside people, building teams, making community partnerships. We squeezed all of that into 3 months. And the reason we did that is there is no real denominational or network home for something like Dwell Church. There's almost nothing like it. That is Jesus-centered and diverse and affirming. There's really no place for that church to exist. But we believe that Dwell Church is the church of the future. That's our dream that we want to be dreaming about. The church of the future. So giving to Dwell Church right now is a really instrumental part of getting to the next phase. Here's our dream. We think that Dwell Church really might become something. We feel like tinkering with the formula, building the church of the future really could be an amazing gift to the world around us. We feel like something that we're providing for people is hope for this, for our life, for following Jesus together. And when you give to Dwell Church, you're giving us the chance to find out what it might one day become. So a lot of y'all are already giving to Dwell Church, but it's helpful to see, I think, that, gosh, we're running with the just most narrowest of margins. And we're doing that because we believe in it. We chose this. No one made us do this. In fact, I absolutely loved my last job, but as I prayed and dreamed about what God was calling me to, having a church like this one is a church that I wanted to go to for the rest of my life. So that's what we're doing. We're asking everybody to do those things. Thank you for considering that. Now, we're also working our way through this series Better Than You Imagine. And last time I asked, what does it feel like to follow Jesus? What is the feeling I associate with being in Jesus' presence? And we're focusing on this passage right here. Oh yeah, what does it feel like to follow Jesus? Got that one? That one? Okay, Matthew 11. Okay, Jesus was talking to his people. He said this, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest, for my yoke is easy and my burden is light." And we talked about how it is something you can really entrust, something you can really count on Jesus to do. That if you take your heaviest thing and you offer it to Jesus, it will feel easier and lighter. This is his strange promise to us. Comedian Pete Holmes, who I love, he sometimes says words that are not appropriate for church. Be warned if you look him up. He said this: he's a deeply thoughtful follower of Jesus. When we're with God, it feels spacious. That's the word he uses. We feel spacious, we feel liberated, we feel unburdened. Burden light, yoke easy. When we follow Jesus, we join the kingdom of the light burden and the easy yoke. And I talked about some of the heavy things in my life. I'm sure you got them. I'm sure some of them are similar to my work and family and marriage and kids, or friendships, or lack thereof and longing deeply for them, or completely other thing that is heavy to you. We can join the kingdom of the light burden and the easy yoke. And another thing we talked about is, what did Jesus know about the world? He knew that it was bathed, saturated in God's presence. And this ultimately is what Jesus has to teach us, to live in God's presence. What does it feel like to live in God's presence? It feels spacious. It feels free. It feels light. And what do we get if we live into, if we spend each day in God's presence? What if you made it your daily routine? And this is where, as a pastor, it's like, I'm never sure what quite to say. Like, this might be a wonderful moment for you. I hope it is. But this week, you will be out in the wild on your own with the challenge of, can I spend each day in God's presence? That's what God intends for you. That's his aspiration for you. That at work and home and neighborhood and drive and frustrating, miserable thing or joyous, delightful thing, you are thinking about Jesus is here with me, promised to be here. What do we get if we train our brains to think that way? Well, we get Jesus as our teacher. And this is maybe the two twin promises that have got me through so many miserable things, that Jesus promised to be with me, whatever I'm going through, as delightful or as miserable as it is, he is there with me as my teacher. So I want to offer you a couple things that I think Jesus teaches us. Now, he is the most famous teacher that ever lived. Almost every person alive knows the name of Jesus, so I can't summarize his teaching, but I'm going to boil it down to a few things that I think are helpful to me, maybe will be helpful to you too. But the first one is really quite simple. What he teaches you is that you are loved. And this is a real tricky one to fully digest because it can seem nebulous. It can seem non-specific or abstract, except that Jesus knows and loves specifically you with all your warts and secrets, with all your amazing qualities. And this is where connecting daily with Jesus becomes quite powerful. That he doesn't want to connect with everybody in a nebulous cloud. He wants to connect with you and me individually, one-on-one. The way God designed the church is sometimes we gather and Jesus is here, big nebulous cloud of joy and delight, but also sometimes it is individual, and that is where this rhythm of gathering and being separate can be so powerful that God very much intends to tell you each and every day that you are loved. And if you ever paid attention to like the river of thoughts that go through you in a day, they're one, quite astounding and weird, at least mine are, and two, they're quite formative, that if they are negative or pessimistic or angry, then that shapes me and my experience of the world. But Jesus' offer here to teach us that we are loved, that the truest thing about you is love, is an invitation to let him teach you a different set of thoughts flowing through the stream of your internal world. That instead of, I hate this, I hate that, I feel frustrated with this, or any number of other weird or even more negative things, we can simply start to replace the flow of thoughts in our mind with, I'm loved. That's it. That's the truest thing about me. That Jesus is with me, that he loves me. And maybe a lot of people that I hope will come to Dwell Church, some actually are, we have a couple categories. One is enthusiastic, yes, this is your place. Another is curious, maybe. You're thinking, could this be for me? But some people are curious maybes about faith. They don't know if they're followers of Jesus. They wouldn't identify themselves that way. But sure, maybe they'd like to check it out. Other people are like, no, that is absolutely not me. But maybe you could see, if you're over in this category, the transformational thing that I think gets to happen to you when you follow Jesus is you get to spend your day having that line of reasoning go through your head that I'm loved. That is quite transformative. That is a real offer to somebody to get to say. And it's a real challenge of our lives to live into the truth that the truest thing about you and I is that we're loved. And here's the other thing that Jesus wants to teach us. He wants to lead us out of our patterns and towards loving others. My wife's a psychologist. Lots of schools of psychology tell us that we develop patterns in our childhood that we can't quite name, but that will define us for our entire lives. And many of them oftentimes are destructive in some way or limiting for us. Maybe they were a useful coping mechanism that now as an adult no longer serves us very well. And psychologists tell us that we are sort of doomed to repeat those patterns until we learn our way out of them. And this is one of the most remarkable things about following Jesus for me, that he has helped me slowly identify these unhelpful patterns and slowly develop a different way of doing my life. And so I go from this trapped, closed circuit of sometimes highly defensive or selfish things, I slowly learn my way out of them towards loving and serving other people. And this is the path that Jesus hopes all of us will go on. And yet, because all of our patterns are different, it's this highly individualized journey of internal formation that Jesus offers to lead us on. Your path looks nothing like mine. Your patterns look nothing like mine. So Jesus offers to teach us, lead us gently on this way of being formed in an internal sort of way, away from those patterns that have troubled us and towards a person who could really genuinely love and serve someone else. And I remember in my patterns, some of them were quite self-destructive. I even thought that was sort of funny. I thought, you know what, I'm a great friend. I have a lot of love in my heart, but actually showing up for other people took me a long time to arrive there. And in my honest moments, I still kind of have a long ways to go. And this is where Jesus as my teacher becomes so powerful. That when I bump up against my old patterns, when I bump up against the stuff I am not proud of, when I bump up against the stuff I hope no one ever sees, that's where I can say in a private moment, Jesus, will you teach me to do this differently? And I could give you some examples of what that is like, but I have no idea what your life is like. I have no idea what your patterns are, but I want to offer you maybe this thing that has helped me, that when you bump up against that feeling of being the same old you can simply say, Jesus, will you teach me? Jesus, will you teach me? Here's the last thing I think Jesus teaches us. He teaches us what faith feels like. Sometimes it feels spacious to go ahead and fully trust something to Jesus. And sometimes I get to feel that with Dwell Church. So many unanswered questions. So many things that I have no idea how to do. So many wonderful people to do it alongside. But still, the big picture is, I just have to say, Jesus, I trust you with this. And sometimes it can actually feel quite light and quite free, even though there are so many unanswered questions. But other times it feels like a battle. It feels really hard to trust God. And this is where Jesus, as our teacher, starts to become, I think, quite astounding. Jesus didn't waltz around covered in gold and lightning. He struggled in quite profound and painful ways. Ways that let me know that it's okay for me to struggle. In fact, sometimes on bad days, what I tell myself is, Jesus, let me know that it's okay to struggle. Here's Jesus struggling in the Garden of Gethsemane the night before he was crucified. He went to pray with his disciples. Almost there. There it is. He knows he's going to be crucified. He goes to pray with his people. And then he withdrew from them to be alone, about a stone's throw away, and he knelt down and began to pray, saying, Father, if you're willing, please don't let this happen to me. Yet not my will, but yours be done. And being in agony, he was praying so fervently, and his sweat became like drops of blood falling upon the ground. Sometimes trusting God feels like a major struggle. It feels like agony. If sometimes our faith feels like agony, we might even be on the right path. And so Jesus teaches me that this is okay in my life. That this is a quite normal state in the process of learning to trust Jesus. And when I get on the other side of this, what Jesus experienced, on the other side of this moment, 3 days from right here, was that spacious kingdom of the light burden and the easy yoke. And so as we work our way through life, if we find ourselves in this moment of agony, we can simply say, Jesus, will you teach me? Will you hold my hand till I get to the other side of this? And that's the great gift that you all can adopt in your everyday life. There is this Jesus that promised to be with you no matter what, and will teach you about anything you could possibly ever need to learn. So, I want to give you a chance, a moment, an opportunity to just think, to ask, Jesus, would you teach me? We'll do that together for a minute or so. Even in the chaos of all those kids in Elks Lodge, we're going to ask Jesus, would you be our teacher? Maybe you've never done that before. That's okay. Maybe you don't even know if Jesus is real or if this is worth your time. It's still quite a powerful prayer to say, Jesus, what is it that you would like me to learn? So we'll do that together. Then we'll sing. Jesus, thank you that you introduced yourself to us, not first as Lord and Savior, but the first thing that you told the world about yourself was that you were here as a teacher. Jesus, so would you teach us the highly individualized lesson that you have set out for each one of us? The long journey of our life to learn what it is that you intended to us to learn. God, I pray for my friends here that above all else they would see themselves the way that you see them, as loved, as cared for. That the message that God sent into the world, the Word become flesh, was a message of love. That you came not to judge, but to redeem and guide. Lord, so would you teach us? Would you be our teacher? Amen.